to this Boulders Brass Podcast-a-thon chat. I think this is the 6th panel we're doing of the day, so we're doing pretty well so far. If you're watching this in the future, we're recording this on Friday the 28th of January 2022, and I am so honoured to be joined by Pete and Kate. We're going to be discussing various things to do with online resources for brass. So I think this is going to be interesting because I think we all have various resources that we create for the online realm, some of which will cross over and some of which won't. And so I'm curious as to if our creation paths are the same or what differs. But we want to meet you all first. So Pete, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was going to say ladies first and let Kate go, but that's
sorry.
You're
just top of my screen, which is the only reason I went there first. It's up to you. Fight it out amongst yourselves. I'm easy breezy.
Ladies first, Kate.
Thank you. Well, I'm Kate Warren from Kate Warren Music. If you don't know, that's where you can find me on all the internet places at Kate Warren Music, katewarrenmusic.com. Very easy. I'm a freelance French horn player and educator, which is something I've been exploring a lot in my career lately and finding this engrossed passion for. Obviously, I create educational resources on Kate Warren Music for playing pedagogy and brass pedagogy, largely surrounding the areas of which that you can practice and how to get better at practicing. I also do a lot of research into gender and equity in brass playing and pretty much anything brass playing related.
Amazing. I'm really excited to hear all about everything. And actually, what you just said about gender equity, especially in brass, is going to link to the thing that goes up on our YouTube channel after this, which is talking about that with a different panel. So I want to take credit for that scheduling. It was an accident, let's be honest. Okay, Pete, we are going to come to you this time.
Oh, okay. Well, hi there, everybody. My name is Pete Freeman. I am a retired public school band director, a music teacher, a student teacher, actually. Also an administrator of fine and performing arts. Currently, I am the president and principal trombonist for the Massapequa Philharmonic. Also play with the South Shore Symphony, some other ensembles here on Long Island, which is a suburb of New York. And I run a website called thetromboneplace.com. It's also a Facebook group. And the mission of the website is to provide information, inspiration, and motivation to young, basically beginning to intermediate plus trombonists and their teachers. And that's been very exciting.
Yeah, these sound like excellent things that we're coming up with. So my first sort of question for the room is what led you to decide to produce a set of resources for the crazy place that is the internet?
Kate?
So when I was younger, actually, I was not from a family that could afford to put me in private lessons. And I mean, obviously I'm here now. I was a band nerd. Band was my favorite class. All I wanted to do was like learn more about playing the French horn. And because I didn't take lessons, I turned to all of these online resources that existed. So as I entered like a transitory period in my professional career, I started like trying to flirt with the idea of making some online resources. And then once I started, I was like, wow, like I'm able to make this space that is a new modern day version of what I was relying so heavily on when I was a young student. And that in itself is just a very fulfilling circle for me to be able to create things in the same way that I needed them when I was younger.
Nice. Pete, did yours come about in a sort of similar way?
It's a little similar, except, I'm older than both of you. So, for me, when I was at that point, online meant there were a bunch of people in front of you at the grocery store. So it really, I come from a different place. I got started farther along. Instead of playing, for me, it was teaching. I didn't think about starting an online resource. That was the last thing on my mind. The only thing I wanted to do was provide a video for one of my students to be able to play the C major scale with. And that was it. And I went on and I found a whole bunch of things that were out there, because obviously when you put something online, when you start a podcast or when you start an app or anything, you almost in a sense lose the ability to control what people think about it or work with that. The other thing is there's so much stuff out there that the quality is not necessarily what we're looking for. So when I was looking for recordings or YouTube videos of that C major scale, I found different types, but not what I wanted. The ones that I found were students who were playing them for playing tests, or I found trombonists who were doing the videos, and they were wonderful, but they would be about 15 minutes long because the teacher would sit there and say, okay, now we need to show you all the slide positions, and here's how you play fourth position, and here's how you do this. Like if it was a trumpet or French horn, this is how you think of that note, and this is how you do that. And it would just keep going and going until finally I'm sitting there thinking, get to the scale. I want to find out how to play this. The other types that were shorter were from band directors who were making recordings apparently for their students, and the band directors were not trombone players. So they were giving good information, but the quality of their performance wasn't what I was looking for. And that is in no way a put down of those teachers, because it would have been the same thing when I was a band director if I was making a video of how to play the C scale on the oboe. I would have been able to show you and you could have gotten the fingerings right, but it probably wouldn't have been something that you'd want to have the sound on for too long. So I created a C scale video, and it's just the name, the video comes up, it says C major scale for trombone. It has then the word letters come up, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, with the slide positions written down so that the students could take a screenshot of that if they wanted to keep it. And then I played the scale where I showed the name, I displayed the name and the slide position of each note as I played it. And the entire video was, I think, 1 minute and 10 seconds. And so here was what I wanted. What's the information? This is what I want to have taught. And this is what I'm hoping people are looking for, and they'll get that information. Once I did the C scale, the student liked it. And I thought, you know what, let me continue with this, and I'll do the rest of the major scales. And so I had 12 major scales. The 3 of them that were in harmonic, I included both names. So as you were playing, I didn't make an F sharp video and then a G flat video. I just did one of them and had both note names on it. With the goal being that it's 1 minute, you can play along with it, get the information, and if you need it again, it's easy to just go ahead and watch it again. And that's all I did, just the 12 major scales, until the next summer when I thought, you know what, let's include some minor scales. So we did the natural, harmonic, and melodic minors. It's like, well, maybe we should have the modes going. And it just, as it came into turning into the scale of the day, where every day I was doing another scale, it got to a point where I had recorded 240 different scales, which is a little strange, I think, but it was done. So once I had that, then it was like, well, where am I going to put all of this? And that's when the idea started of, well, let's start a website. And if there's going to be a website, let's do some other things in there so that any trombonist can come to it and know that this is a specific place where you could come to find the different types of information that you need. So over the past couple of years, I include videos of not just the scales, but a whole bunch of easy music theory videos, none of which are more than 3 or 4 minutes long. Just so if I need to know the notes of a bass clef, or I need to know how to figure out the notes of a major scale, there's a specific short video there to find it. I based it off of, I don't know if you know of Khan Academy, where he has videos on all different topics, and you can find exactly what you need and you get it. So I continue with that. I have those videos. I continued expanding the website to a point where it is now, where there's a whole bunch of different things. You can go on there if I need a metronome. Well, go on there and go on the section that's called Tools of the Trade, and there's a metronome, and there's a tuner. I need to know what different trombonists sound like. So we have the Pantheon of Great Trombonists. So there's videos or audios and very short biographies of, I think we're in the 40s, about 40 different trombonists. Um, there's a whole bunch of jazz tunes that are basically used for evaluation that I've recorded, and I do them twice because, again, it's supposed to be educational. It's not a video of me showing off by any stretch of the imagination, but it's me performing the piece at tempo and then me performing the piece at about half tempo so you can play along with it. I use a lot of alternate positions. I include the names of the alternate positions. The goal is, what's the information? What's the easiest, most efficient way of getting that information out there so that students or their teachers, and especially as I've been coming to find out, I don't know, Kate, if you find this, for French horn, I get notes from elementary and middle school band directors who don't play trombone, and maybe you get them from French horn also, where they're so thankful that there's something out there that they can, for a minute or two, whether they show it to their kids or whether they want to be the provider of the information, they can watch it for a minute or two, the period before that class is happening and the kids are walking in, where they can get the information. So it really started very organically for me. And it seems to be going very well.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the sort of theme that runs through these sorts of things is accurate information and accessibility. Yeah. And I keep saying that I'm running these panels and I keep answering my own questions, but in this particular setting, this is my online resource, and so mine markets slightly differently to some of yours, where actually my audience is more college age brass musicians, brass enthusiasts, amateurs and professionals, and fellow professionals. And so the sort of content that I provide is then slightly longer form, so maybe slightly more in depth, but it's got the same basis. Like, it's easy to find, it's free to access, not very much of our content is behind a paywall. We've got like some very short episodes that are on our Patreon, but that's it. Every main episode, nearly 100 of them, are free to access for everybody on all major platform for podcasts. I didn't ever want it to become a thing that people couldn't get hold of. So yeah, and then I'm sort of curious then, so from where you started your resources, have you kept, both of you, producing them in the same way, or have they grown and changed and morphed? How's that worked out?
So I live in the social media realm, and that's how I disseminate almost all of my resources and educational content. So I spoke with Pete a little bit a couple days ago just to get on the same page, and I mentioned to him one of the challenges that I started facing was like, social media changes so rapidly and so quickly in not only like what's successful on social media, but the kind of content people want to see. And Kate Warren Music just celebrated our 2nd birthday a couple weeks ago. And in like the short 2 years that I've been doing this, the switch from, I'm going to say long form, and I genuinely mean like 60-second long form content. No one will watch 60 seconds anymore. And I'm facing this challenge, and it's fun and inspiring for me, of developing my content into these like 15 seconds, 5 seconds, the attention span of the current internet. So in that capacity, that's really changed. That's a fifth of the time I'm used to creating something meaningful and something useful, because I don't do a lot of the just like, oh, it's a meme, or oh, it's funny. I really try to make sure everything I'm putting out there is valuable in some sense. So that's been cool. Obviously, I do a lot of YouTube. I do a lot of like Instagram carousels, which are still there, but particularly the video has evolved so quickly.
It has, and I agree with everything you're saying. So I think we can all applaud everybody who's spending an hour with us, knowing that their attention spans are probably gone after the first 10 seconds. It's funny, actually, my videos and the things that I'm putting out are starting to get a little bit longer. I'm finding that the information, I'm starting to do more classical music tutorials. And I'm trying to think of the best way to get the information through so that it makes sense. But it's taking as little time as possible. And it's just becoming harder and harder for the things that I'm doing to make them that short. That said, Kate is 1000% correct. it is flying. We do deal with with people who have the attention span of a goldfish, and we also deal with people who look for more stuff. I think a lot of it is teaching people how to use the platform, and I think once the older generation gets familiar with the platforms, I think that's when the videos and things start to get a little more complicated. To me, social media is kind of like the clubhouse. When we were kids, the clubhouse was a place we went where the adults couldn't go. That was our place to hide. And so originally, from what I could see, it was Facebook. All the kids gathered on Facebook. That was the safe clubhouse. Well, then all the moms and dads started watching Facebook and realizing how cool this was. And now they're on and their grandparents are on. Well, the kids needed a new clubhouse. So they went to Instagram, or they went to, someplace else. And as they keep going someplace else, they're making it to a point where once the parents start showing up, then they have to go somewhere else. And I think because that's happening faster and faster, content is getting shorter and shorter. And with that happening, if I'm going to stay on the Facebook and Instagram and those places where the teachers are, then I can now expand the time of what I'm sharing, because now I'm pulling in the people who have crashed the clubhouse, who are willing to spend a little more time getting the details of what I'm trying to share. I don't know if Kate's finding that also. Again, I come from a different, some of us are old. I can't help it.
If that's the logic, I would like the parents to hurry up and crash TikTok, because I haven't yet figured it out, because there's just too much going on there, and I don't have the brain space for it. So if they can hurry up and be done with that one, I'd be very grateful.
Oh, by the way,
TikTok
this is tea.
is a
If
challenge
anyone's
for me.
wondering, I just, I use this mug for you, Melissa. So we're good.
I can't tell if that's because I also like a pint of Guinness, or because my tea is now empty, to be fair. You can see how many cups have been in it today already. That's gross. I'm going to put that back to one side. Super British of me, yes. Amazing. So I wonder if you've noticed anything change in the way that people have been consuming or using resources and things online during the pandemic, and if you've needed to sort of change anything or add anything to that, or, there's been an increase of other people producing resources, and, if you've had to make a path around, how's that sort of affected your sort of creation of the things that you do?
For me, everybody's, it became the home project. This became this old house for a whole bunch of musicians that had to find something to do. All of a sudden it was, how can I make a video where I'm playing 5 parts at the same time and put that out? So I think that people who had no intention of ever doing anything online, all of a sudden, really became students of the media and became a lot stronger in putting out content. So a lot of good stuff has been out there, which means that a lot of stuff that, we probably would not recommend to our students has been put out there at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kate, do you feel the same?
I almost want to say no, but I feel like no is too brazen of a contrary statement. I love, the pandemic has been a worldwide tragedy, and the fact that so many of us have had to scale down everything we do in our lives to fit on this computer space, I can't even begin to talk about how horrible that is. But through our, excuse me, through our mass accumulation into the internet, like you have gotten these great pedagogues who otherwise would not be on the internet, putting out very valuable resources, putting out content. You've got people who maybe would have never picked up a TikTok or an Instagram account who have become fantastic resources. And I'm always one of those people like, join the club, come do this with me. Like, I love to see other people creating and making anything that could be useful to somebody, because even at the end of the day, if it's I'm sorry, Pete, I know your thing is about making really good trombone scales. Even if it's not the best scale in the world, if it helps one kid get better at something, it's helped one kid get better at something. And that's my mission as an educator, and I think that's really important. Like, as long as someone is being helped by it, it's worth it. And I'm so glad it's here in the space with me.
I think we're on the same page. I don't see what you're saying as a disagreement at all. I think that, there's a lot of things out there, and no matter what you're doing, whether it's books or music or something, there's two types, good and bad. And good is the stuff that you like and use, and bad is the stuff that you don't. So when I say something isn't necessarily something that I'd want to show somebody, that in no way means that it's bad, because that might be, my garbage may be somebody else's treasure, and their garbage may be my treasure. I think it's a very individualized thing. But in no way from me saying what I was saying was I implying that I thought that people shouldn't be putting stuff out there. So I think we're kind of saying the same thing.
I think I also find a lot of inspiration from seeing other people interact with our online spaces. When I see other creators making things, or even like asking questions to their audiences, like, oh, like, how do you work on high range? Then I start being like, oh, how do I work on high range? Like, how's my high range doing right now? What am I working? Like, it makes me ask myself questions, which is inspiring both for me as a performer and player, but also as like, oh, I maybe I should start talking about like high range exercises and embouchure strength things. And I like to bounce off of everything.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It provides like a constant space for learning as well, doesn't it? Because so like my resource is I don't really do very much for mine. I ask other people questions. I get them to say lots of things. Surprise.
That is hard work in itself.
Yeah, it's different hard work, because I get to use the same template each time, and something different comes back. But every conversation that I have, I go away and I'm like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that for a while. So like when I interviewed Gretchen Renshaw James, for example, she started talking about how much Arnold Jacobs' Song and Wind was, a formative book for her. And that's a resource that we all know about. But it was her way of describing how it makes her think about breathing and less about paralysis by analysis. You don't start thinking about your embouchure or your fingers, because she's a tuba player. But for me, it's slide and things like that. So the next time I went to practice, I was like, oh yeah, I could remember all that stuff that Gretchen was talking about, that she'd gotten from a resource before, then from a resource before that then was useful to me. It was, I had a little lesson without really having to do very much. But because I'm creating this thing, there was something else for me to take away from it as well. So I hope everyone else takes away as much from my podcast as I do, because I have a lovely time and I learn lots of things and meet lots of people. So whilst we're talking then about resources that are sort of widely available, are there other resources that you all like to use that exist online, or other people, products and things that you've discovered online that you use and recommend?
Okay.
So this will be a hard sell, because it's a blog, and I know it's 2022 and nobody reads blogs anymore, but the resource that got me so interested in music making and so interested in French horn, just like all things French horn, is called Horn Matters. It's a blog run by Dr. Erickson, John Erickson from ASU, and Bruce Hem. I'm not sure where he's from, but they've been putting out articles on this blog for like 20 years. And when I was young, there was a point in time, embarrassingly, I have to admit, where I had read every single article on their website. and it has a couple thousand articles at this point, but he groups them into like different courses and series on topics. You can search by instrument or pedagogical point. Like, it's amazing. And it's just this trove of information. It's the Grove dictionary of horn, everything you could possibly ask for. Again, it's a blog, so it's a hard sell in 2022, but any question you had about French horn playing, you could get an answer to on that website.
That sounds really exciting. I'm going to be looking into that when we hang up here. I was looking at some of the different podcasts and apps and things that I've seen that are helpful. And I don't have one in particular, but there are a few that I go to regularly for inspiration and just to I'm like things other than just music. If we're going to be sticking with music, if anyone's interested in learning more about a lot of the different classical pieces that we play, there is a podcast called Sticky Notes, which is wonderful. It's Josh Weilerstein, who's a conductor, and he'll take a half hour, 45 minutes discussing one piece and explaining how it works. But he does it in a way that is both interesting to someone who's an amateur who really doesn't know too much, and yet if you're somebody who plays the music, you get something out of it too. I just started listening to the Mind Valley podcast, and that is all about self-improvement and growth, and they're short lessons. The last one I listened to was just how to pull yourself out of a panic attack, which was very interesting, as a teacher, knowing, especially when you have, whether it's myself getting ready to walk on stage to do a solo, or whether I'm working with students, helping them get over stage fright. A lot of good things there. If anyone isn't listening to the Bulletproof Musician, start. That's, every Sunday morning, they put out a new entry. It's also an email, and it's all about different methods about practicing and different mindsets in order to improve yourself. And it's unfailingly wonderful.
I have to admit, I've been on that email list probably since like 2011 or 2012.
Mm-hmm.
I fully recommend it. Just like you said, it's an amazing resource.
You can't go wrong with that. It's great. If anybody's thinking about music and the entrepreneurship side of things, there's a podcast that just finished, but they're all still out there, called Crushing Classical. The host, Tracy Friedlander, has interviews with people who've started all different types of careers with music as being the basis. And the information and the inspiration from that is pretty incredible. If you're just thinking about trombone, I'll be selfish. I don't have one that has, all of the information that Kate was talking about. But there are a couple of specific trombone podcasts that are incredible. Ian Bausfeld does one called the Ian Bausfeld Experience, where he just picks various things to talk about, but it's always interesting. And, so to me, in trombone wise, there's the Third Coast Trombone, which is great interviews with different trombonists. Hip Bone Music is Michael Davis, who has conversations with some of the great, mostly jazz, but a lot of classical players. And if you're just looking for something relaxing, but yet, that'll make you think, there's one more that I don't know how many people know about it. It's called Curious Minds at Work. And the person who hosts that, basically, she must be a voracious reader, because she'll have people on and she talks about the books that they've written that all have to do with just obviously curious minds at work. So it's all the mental game and how you approach life, how you approach work, how you approach family, whatever you're doing. And it's really, I've come away from those with a lot of good information.
That's a nice range of stuff. And if we sort of thought slightly more sort of traditional media, any books that are like top of your shelf for like pedagogy or general practice or anything like that, that's like that's one to reach for as a brilliant resource?
I'm,
I think Kate's gone
as
together as
Kate
a
goes
prop.
to her bookshelf,
Because I've got
Pete
some
and
in my
Melissa
like to read
stayed
pile.
and circled the airport. Oh, let's see what we have.
I'm
It's show
so
and tell time.
intrigued.
Yay!
So I have these two books, and I am one of those voracious readers. I read an embarrassing number of self-help books. I absolutely love them. They impact my life greatly, and they make me happy, so I keep doing it. And I picked up both of these books initially just to get my life together, but I think they were also incredibly applicable to like my playing, my person acting as an educational resource, my creating in that context. They were like game changers for life for me. And I suggest reading them both in tandem. And it's the starting one is Atomic Habits, which I think everybody has heard of this book. It's really great. I highly suggest it. It's step one, and I feel like you have to read Atomic Habits before you can read The Sweet Spot by Christine Carter, because this is the one. I think it talks about how we work, like in our daily life, how we balance our work and rest, and how you can actually, like, when you start resting and taking care of yourself, you can be way more productive in way less time. And I did not believe it at all until I started doing it. And it's looking at the sweet spot of productivity versus self-care. And it completely revolutionized the way that I interacted with work and creating and practicing and performing, and kind of streamlined everything. But to get the most out of it, I really thought reading Atomic Habits before it set the stage for what I needed to get, the sweet spot.
Well,
Okay,
because
I've
it's
written
show and tell, I'm going to ask to be excused from the class for 15 seconds.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I sort of sprung this one on everyone, and now everyone wants
You
to
asked us about our favorite books. Little did you know.
I know, this is no offense to my other panels, this is the most exciting part of my day so far. I'm so intrigued as to what's happening off camera. I've got like two on my nightstand that I still need to read, and I can't remember who wrote them. There's Burnout, and then there's another one.
Oh, pink and black cover?
Yeah, like a sort of lilac-y
Fantastic.
shade one. Yeah, I've not read it yet. It's in my to be read pile. There's another one up there. I wish I could
really
remember the name.
appreciated it that one of the authors was a musician, and like she I think she has a DMA in music. So that context of everything they're talking about, the book, for the listeners, the book is about burnout, if that wasn't obvious, but it frames it in the mind also as performing musicians and people who have to practice and go to work and go to school. And I really appreciated that aspect of it.
Yeah, I think I need to move it up my list. It was a recommendation from Brianne Borden, so thank you, Brianne. It is in my pile. I will get to it. Sorry, Pete, you're back with your prop.
I am. I should have put, it's this has nothing to do with anything, but this is Mona Lisa Duck, and I probably should have just put her on the screen so that, you had something nice to look at while you guys were chatting. My daughter took a vacation in Paris, and, she came back. She got my wife a beautiful handbag and all these other lovely things, and she got me Mona Lisa Duck. I got the better end of that deal, everybody. Okay, I have a couple of books here. Since it's, like we said, show and tell. The Talent Code,
Ooh, okay.
Daniel Coyle. This is really, it kind of talks about how different places have created such large amounts of excellence and the things that they did. Like, why is there a little camp in New Hampshire that puts out these incredible musicians? Or how come a whole bunch of tennis players are coming out of one small town in Russia? And it talks about what they're doing in order to not only produce excellence, but to keep reproducing it with other people. That's a very dry way of describing it. It's a really good book. Here's the one that I just finished, Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg. I was surprised. I started this book not thinking that it was going to be as wonderful as it was. It really picks up on why we do what we do, and the whole routine of how we set something up, and how our habits kind of take over so we feel like we don't have any choice of what's going on. But yet we actually do have a choice, and it shows you how to break that cycle in order to push away bad habits and bring in new ones. So I've used this. This has been helpful for me in getting myself going sometimes with some of the different things that I'm working on with my practicing. This is a new book, Fearless. This is more about stage fright, and how athletes, they when the time comes to perform, they don't freeze, and it's how to get past the idea of it's. I call it stage fright. So, also great stories, excellent, and if you have time to read only one book, in my opinion, when it comes to practicing, and it's not even a question. Peak by Anders Ericsson. This is how the whole idea of deep practice, if you've ever heard that phrase of how you can do, very similar to what Kate was talking about, how you can get as much done in the least amount of time. And it talks about some of the things with relaxation and stepping away. Kate said it better than I can. I'll just say, if anybody who's watching this on recording, go back and listen to what Kate said. But this is really cool. I do have some others, but unfortunately, I'm not going to have you sit there while I go rummaging through the stacks.
That's fine. That's a really good stack
start
of things. Yeah, really. I've just written them all down in completely illegible handwriting. So you'll probably both get a message later being like, what were those books again, please? And so,
I've got 2 recommendations from Kate that I'm going to get to right away. I can't wait.
I'm not allowed to buy any more books till I read the ones that I've bought. It's my new rule. Oh, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway was the other one, Kate, that I was thinking of. Second book on my, similar sorts of things. Sorry. That's go back sort of 5 minutes when I couldn't remember that I was caught up with myself now anyway. So I've been asking this question to a lot of the panels today because I'm curious. If money was no object, you had infinite money, infinite time, is there a sort of dream project or resource-based thing that you would like to create/run? I like to live in a hypothetical world where things might not ever happen. But, money's no object. You have infinite time. What sort of is a dream project that you could run or be involved in?
You've just described my ideal scenario, my fever dream of a future. It's just something subsidizes me to just keep doing what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And I totally would. Like, I love being able to explore anything that has to do with playing or practicing or teaching in any of those capacities. If I can give a small plug to myself real quick, I just finished recording a year's worth of beginning educational content on French horn, actually for Con and Selmer, and their music platform, Music Professor, which is going to be linked with Smart Music. And we made a year's curriculum from I've never played any instrument before in my life, I have no idea what music is, to like I'm a solid beginner French horn player. And I would love, like, if I had infinite time and infinite money, to, like, obviously expand that to, like, I'm a solid intermediate horn player, everything, like, but really focus in on, like, skill-based playing. Like, okay, here is 15 different videos on 15 different topics about articulation. and 15 on tone, and just keep forever exploring different areas of playing in all the capacities they can be explored through. I always say I'm the exception as a musician. I love practicing. It's not about performances for me. It's not about the gig or the show. It's about like playing my fundamentals for 45 minutes. That's my favorite part of being a musician. So any way I can share how much joy and interest that brings me educationally with others, that would be it. If someone listening would like to subsidize Kate Warren to do that, please email katewarrenmusic@gmail.com.
Yes, and if that generous sponsor is listening also, can you top up my fundraiser, please? Because that's why we're here. Pete, what about you then?
Maybe I'll do that subliminally. Bold as Brass podcast, give money now. I really think that Melissa really needs the money, and we have to. My dream, if I had infinite resources, I would, make sure I was giving all my money to the Melissa Brown, making sure that this was happening so we can get to the International Women's Brass. I forgot what it's called. Okay. Oh boy, I have come to learn that if I have a dream and it's infinite resources and infinite time, I don't necessarily have the fire to make sure that it gets done because there's always that extra time. So I'm going to change your question just a tiny bit.
Okay, that's fine.
And say I have infinite resources for a project that I need to turn in 6 months. So now that'll give me a little focus for it. Everything that Kate said sounds fantastic. I would probably do the same thing, except I don't know if people want to see me teaching, all those French horn lessons. So I would probably switch over to trombone. I have been blessed to meet so many wonderful people and musicians and different places of the world. I would love to do something similar. Obviously not as well as the Bold as Brass podcast that hopefully everybody's contributing to. But in a way of being able to meet great trombonists and great trombone teachers from all over the world and just spend a half hour or 15 minutes if that's all I could get, but ideally, half hour to an hour, not listening to them. That would be the bonus part, but just talking with them and getting the real deal information. How they came about doing this. And then for me, some specific things like, okay, how do you slur from this note to that note without blipping? There's certain things that there are musicians from all over the world. I mean, I've found, as long as we're plugging, the website, the tromboneplace.com, it has opened up. I don't know, Kate, if you've found this, but I've had conversations with people from all over the world, places that I never would have thought of being exposed to or having me maybe offering some information that's helpful. With our Facebook group, we're closing in on 3,000 members, and so many of them, yes, a lot of them are from the United States, but there's so many from Europe and a whole bunch from Africa, where the brass movement it's huge, and there's so much going on.
It's amazing
there
to see how many different places come in contact with us in the internet space nowadays. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
I just like you said, I talk to people from all over all the time, and it's awesome.
It's incredible. I was answering questions from a young trombone player from Ghana in Africa, and first of all, just forget everything else, forget music. Somebody from the United States is having a inspiring conversation with somebody from Africa, or someone from Europe is having an inspiring conversation with somebody from Australia. what we're doing here in many ways isn't just about music. I'm sorry, I'm
Mhm.
going off topic from Melissa's question
No,
here,
it's
but I'm
fine.
going to keep going off topic with it. I just think that a lot of the problems, globally, we're seeing in our little way, we're showing how much more similar to one another we are than how different we are from one another. And so, the definitely Kate, definitely Melissa, you're making the world a better place. And sometimes we think about it, I'm just making a little trombone video, or I'm just doing a lesson on how to be a beginning French horn player. I'm just doing my little podcast. You know what? We are making connections that are making, in our little way, the world a better place. So if I had my 6 months, I would continue doing that. Only I would travel to all of those places personally and get to meet the people.
Yeah, that's kind of what mine would be, if I was thinking online resource base. With the podcast was, well, it's basically essentially what I'm trying to raise money for, but extending it for longer. Being able to take the podcast and do it in person in lots of other places, and that's not to have a problem with doing it virtually on Zoom, because if it wasn't for Zoom, if it wasn't for the online space, I'd never have been able to start doing this. And, we wouldn't be able to be running this panel now because I would
Right.
simply never have met you, which would be a true tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
But, it would be nice we're people that, musicians, we thrive on like actual human interaction and other people. And so it would be really nice to bring it and have those interactions in person. I've done one in-person interview in 100. So, let's, I'd really like to take that number up a little bit. Even the musicians in the UK, because of the pandemic, we've not been able to meet and be in the same space. So, yeah, it'd be nice to take it to other events and do more recording and move around with it.
No. Well, I think
Super.
that's what you'll be doing in Texas.
Fingers crossed. That is the plan. That is what we're aiming for. So I've got one last question then to sort of shoehorn in with our last few minutes. And we've sort of spoken about other platforms and lots of books and things that we use as resources. Are there other people that you think are in the online space that you think are being really good role models for brass playing and, your specific instruments, I guess, as well, that you could recommend other people went and specifically looked up?
Kate, French horn.
Oh, I mean, so many.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is why I put it to you
in
first.
a similar vein to what you were both talking about like interviewing in person and like great pedagogical players. If you haven't heard of Sarah Willis's Horn Hangouts, you should start hearing about Sarah Willis's Horn Hangouts. She does a very similar thing. They're, I think, largely hosted on YouTube, and of course there are thousands of French horn videos you can watch on YouTube. But other creators that I love, a personal good friend of mine, Scott Legier Horn, does a lot of similar things that I do on Instagram. We've done a couple partnerships. We actually had a chat about mouthpieces and created a lot of content about like how to pick your mouthpiece and what each part does. Who else does things? Oh, I'm blanking on her name. You're going to have to come back to me. I have to pull some names out of my brain.
Okay, well, while we're having the brain pulling going on over there, there are, in terms of the online space, there's a couple of really, really good ones. If you haven't seen, first of all, for trombone playing, if you haven't gone to the International Trombone Association or the British Trombone Association websites, there's incredible information there. The Chop Shop is done by a jazz player named Dion Tucker. And really, his educational videos are spot on. There's a couple of other ones with the word trombone in them. Trombone101.com is done by my good friend, Sean Roish. And it's, excuse me, incredible charts and conversations and a little bit of blog about playing, and so any student who wants to become a better player, it's an invaluable resource. Also, if anyone knows the trombone author, Brad Edwards. He's written a whole bunch of wonderful books. His website is trombonezone.org. And also Alex Neutrid has tromboneguide.com. He's putting out more and more resources. I
was also
could
going to
keep
say
going.
Alex.
Yeah. Did I destroy his last name?
I was going to say I don't know how to pronounce it, and I hope I'm doing it correctly if he hears this. But if listeners, if you don't know, his whole thing is about everything on his website's free. Everything he talks about, he has like printable materials, he has books on exercises, he has etudes. It's all free and available to download for anyone. And like that's a big pillar of my personal vendetta as an educator. And like the project I filmed for Con and Selmer, all of that's available to stream for free. And I think creating like accessible resources for musicians is the big thing. I wrote a book this past year and I really struggled with it. I was like, am I going to charge for this book? Like what? I put so much work into it. I need to, but I wanted it to be like finding the pricing points, like what is the lowest I can charge for this, which is why it became a digital book, so that it's the most accessible it can be, because like knowledge should be free, not like you shouldn't have to fight a paywall to learn something. Everyone should be able to access. And that's what you're doing on this podcast. That's Pete. That's what you're doing on the Trombone Place. Everyone should be able to access any information that they want to become the best at anything they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
Sorry for that tangent.
No.
I was also going to bring up the Musician's Guide with Karen Cubides. It's a podcast.
I had that on my list also.
there are a number of really interesting interviews from different types of musicians and like music industry people, music administration people, not just performers and players, but again, a holistic approach to what it means to be a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, folks, I've just seen the time. And if I'm not careful, I really have to watch the clock on these things, because otherwise we will just keep going and keep going and keep going. And I'm going to have to think about wrapping it up there. But I hope everyone has learned a lot about, our creative process with making, like we say, informative and accessible material online. And there are lots of other people doing it. That's not to say that anyone's treading on anyone's toes. There's plenty of space. And I'm glad that we can add to this, especially Kate, as you said, to allow as many people to enjoy what we enjoy and what we do as possible. And long may we be able to continue. And like we say, if anyone wants to give us infinite budgets and times to continue doing this forever and ever, then we will gratefully hear from you. But on that note, thank you folks so much for coming and talking to me and sharing your wisdom with us all.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This has been great. Kate, you've been incredible.
Yeah, it was great to learn about Pete's projects too. I hadn't heard of it before you put us in contact with each other. So
ta-da! That is the magic of the internet. Super, folks. It's slightly unceremonious way to have to end the live stream is that I have to end the call. So I will keep in touch with you both, but it's been a pleasure to chat, and thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody.